a video for you guys going over 2 very frequently asked questions that we receive from you guys. So when we're talking about resource guarding, there's so many different layers that comes with. Resource guarding kind of stems from exactly what it sounds like, exactly what it is there's a resource. So if it's a phone, this is mine, this is a resource for me. I don't want anybody else to have it because it's a valuable resource. If your dog gets something, maybe like a bone or a toy or a tug or a squeaky, that's a value to them and it's a resource to them and they take it. A lot of times dogs will do that because they've never had it before. So if your dog has never had a bone, your dog has never had a toy, and then they get it, they maybe feel like they never get it again or they're never gonna see it again, so they resource guard it. They take it, they possess it, this is mine. So I'm talking about resource guarding as a general whole. I mean, there's so many different variations, which is why I don't do a lot of this one-on-one FaceTime stuff about certain topics, because there's so many different layers. But in general, when you're talking about resource guarding, it's a dog taking something, possessing it, and they will protect it. Oftentimes they will hide under a bed, they will go into their crate, they will go anywhere that they can enjoy it, where nobody else can get to it. So let's say this dog has a resource guarding issue with bones. I think that's a very common thing in most households. The first thing is understanding why this happens, which I just talked about. The other thing is trying to decrease that value, decrease that ticket of the bone being worth $100. So what you want to do is you want to try to give the dog more items to decrease the value of the said bone. So if they have a bone and they don't have anything else, that's going to be the highest ticket. But if they have other things in the house that maybe they can go and play with or they can chew on, that particular thing may become less valuable over time. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with resource guarding, because obviously it can become very dangerous. Sometimes dogs are only resource guarding towards other dogs, and other times dogs are resource guarding towards everybody, people, dogs, kids, etc. You have to take into consideration how dangerous this can be if you don't figure out the situation or approach the situation appropriately, responsibly, etc. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're decreasing the value of the possession. If this is something that they got, like a sock or a kid's toy or something that they shouldn't have had, you have to understand that these are the types of things where your obedience comes in, where you can recall the dog over, you can out them, you can take it, you can put it away. If you have a dog typically that is resource guarding something very heavily, there's a really good chance that they don't have great obedience, because you can't get that from them. You don't have that relationship. They take something, they run, they go into the bed, this is mine, nobody can tell me anything different. But if you have a dog with good obedience, you can say, Fido, come. They come to you, they don't want to, but they're like, man, I don't want you to take this away. And then you take it away if it's something that they shouldn't have. You want to be careful when you're doing this with items that maybe is a dog bone or is a dog toy, because you can create more possession by taking it away often, because then they want to crave it and they become more possessive over it. So you have to be very careful when you're doing obedience with the outing and the letting go with these things. So if it's something that they shouldn't have, ultimately it should be bring it to me, out it, and then it goes away, and then you gotta do your due diligence to make sure that it's not out for them to get again. But if it's something that they should have that is a bone that they're becoming nasty about, I mean, honestly, to make it so safe and to make it as successful as possible is don't give them that high value bully stick. Don't give them that marrow bone. Obviously, it's too much value for them, and if there's other things going on that then they become nasty or aggressive about with the possession issue, I just wouldn't give it to them. I would wait for them to get rid of it, and then I would take it and I wouldn't give it to them, and you kind of learned your lesson there. However, there is resource guarding issues that people deal with on an everyday basis. So if your dog goes and gets something and says, okay, this is mine, it doesn't matter what it is. That's typically what people are dealing with at home is, when I get this, this is now mine, nobody else can have it. I'm gonna bite you, I'm gonna growl at you. I'm not necessarily an aggressive dog, I'm not a mean dog, but I am possessing this item and I don't want anybody else to have it. Let's say it's and I've done this before, so I'll use this as an example. I was in Las Vegas doing a seminar and they had a board and train, and this dog was a lab, a young lab, I'd say 8 to 9 months, and he was resource guarding food. Every time they would put the food into the kennel, the dog would then become resource guarding to other dogs and to other people. What I ended up doing, I said, let's get the dog out. I used a 4-foot X pen, which an X pen is kind of like a baby gate that is movable. It has panels. It's like a chain link fence. So we used a 4-foot X pen, which came up to like my chest. I put the dog on a slip leash and a slip collar because that's what he was training on. So we put the kibble down and I did obedience, because it's a possession game, which means if somebody's like, hey, you can have this, but I'm gonna hold on to it. You're not gonna possess it as much, right? So what I did is I said, hey, I'm gonna put the food down, but I'm not gonna let go. And again, you have to be very careful when you're dealing with this because there's so many different flavors and variations and degrees of resource guarding. I don't want you guys to get hurt, and that's kind of your job to decipher where you guys are at and how dangerous and how aggressive this potential dog could be. So all I did is I put that barrier up because what that allows me to do is I can immediately step back and remove myself from the situation. So all I did is I put that 4-foot X pen here. I put the dog on a leash. He was into the X pen. I was out here. I took the kibble and I tested it out. Let's see how bad this is. I put the kibble and the bowl up against the fence. Sometimes dogs will immediately start curling their lip and say, drop that right now, this is mine. I saw none of that. He was wiggling his butt. I said, hey, Fido, sit. The dog didn't sit, gave him a little pressure. I said, hey, pay attention to me, which immediately took control of the situation. I said, hey, you're not in charge, bud, I am. Let's follow the rules here. I don't want you to think that you can take advantage of me and growl at me. I put the food down, he's sitting, and then I just took the kibble out and I took the bowl back and I said, break, and then he came and ate the food right out of my hand. So again, eating the food out of my hand takes away that value and kind of shares it of like, hey, I'm giving you this, don't bite the hand that feeds you type thing. I took the bowl away because I don't think it's fair to put the bowl down and have him just engulf the food down because then you're dealing with more conflict. So creating a barrier and using obedience and breaking down, if it's food possession, breaking down some of those things. Now, if it's a bully stick, don't give him bully sticks. If he's gonna be a jerk, he or she's gonna be a jerk around the bully sticks and get nasty, there's other things that you can do and there's other things that you can give your dog to de-escalate the situation. I get this question every year, hundreds of times, and I've never really done a video on it just because there's so many flavors and so many variations and it can be so dangerous if you get a dog that's really, really, really nasty. I'd rather put something out than have you guys always ask me that question and me just ignore it because it's too layered. That's all of that on resource guarding. Be careful, take your time, decrease the value, try to bring the value. If the dog is possessive over food, take the food and give it to the dog, take the food and give it to the dog, take the food and give it to the dog, and that will start decreasing that possession game. The e-collar is going to be one of those things that is an extension of you. So when you're introducing the e-collar to any dog, as long as you're not doing it as in an intervention stage and you're not doing it out of, okay, we have to really correct this dog and discourage this behavior because he or she's gonna hurt somebody. We're talking about introducing the remote collar as an extension for us to increase our relationship on and off leash, but more importantly, highlighting off leash work. The answer to that question is making sure that the dog understands what you're asking them to do in conjunction with the remote collar. So we're not gonna teach the dog new behaviors with the remote per se. I reinforce and or collaborate the e-collar stimulation with pre-existing behaviors. So if I ask a dog to sit, I'm tapping the remote. The dog has to know sit. They have to know what it is in order to shut the remote off and or understand how to shut the remote off. They have to know the behavior first. So my real answer to that is I don't think that there's an age limit, like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, never before, never after. I think it's important for you guys to understand that when you're using the e-collar and you're introducing it, the dog just has to know very clearly what the behavior is. Sit, place, down, whatever you want to do without food and only verbal motivation, which means the dog will do it just because you say it. Because I find a lot of times when people use food, the dogs don't capture the verbal. Out of context, when you put the food away and you say sit, the dog's like, what the heck is sit? And then you get the food out and they put their butt on the ground. So making sure that you've proofed and audited your complete obedience and behaviors verbally with your dog. You want to make sure you're solid. Then you start layering over solid remote collar work. Now, a side question to that is prong collar. When do you want to introduce the prong collar? And the prong collar is, again, it's a form of an extension of you on the leash. It's a little bit different than the remote collar because the prong collar tends to be a little bit more in your face. It tends to be a little bit more aversive to some dogs because the e-collar has the ability to never be a correction, to never be aversive, to never give the dog any type of punishment. And the prong collar kind of works a little bit differently where it gives the dog more confinement in a correction. It gives the dog more precision. It gives the dog a little bit more pressure when the leash is applied, which is the point, to make it a safer correction, to make it safer pressure for the dog instead of a flat collar, martingale collar. I mean, you've seen the hundreds of videos we've put out and other people have put out about how beneficial the prong collar can be. Be careful with whatever equipment you use. You can mess a dog up with food. You can mess a dog up with e-collar, prong collar, martingale collar, slip collar, harness. The tool expedites your message, right? And if you're a good trainer and you're skillful enough to get your message across really quickly, very, very, very subtly, extremely extraordinarily humane and really clear, the equipment's gonna be, it's gonna change everything. You have to understand that I'm not bringing these dogs in and saying, look what I can do. I'm third party to the dog. I have to make sure that the owner, because they're not a dog trainer, can effectively and efficiently use the equipment and work with the dog in a way that's gonna make progress so they can help their dog out as quickly as possible. So in conclusion, you guys, those are two questions that I really stay away from because there's so many different layers and there's so many different variables and things that could go in and go out. But for context, that's just a general idea. I hope it helps. If you guys haven't yet, do me a solid favor, like this video, subscribe to my channel. We put tutorials and videos out like this all the time. If you guys haven't yet, don't forget we have a brand new official No Bad Dog Members Club where we're putting in unreleased footage, all the footage that you guys see here on YouTube. They're 75% cut from what we're filming. All of that is being dumped into there. You're also getting unreleased podcast. You're getting a great community helping each other out, interacting with each other, and that's where I'm putting a lot of my attention into and a lot of time, and I'm interacting with you guys. We're doing lives in there, and it's the official No Bad Dog Members Club. Link is in the description below. Can't wait to see you there.